Hello everyone, it's Miss Darling in the studio. Welcome. Today let's discuss dyeing with tea some fabrics, from lace to just general fabrics, muslin to cheesecloth, you name it. I've got a little of everything here to show you, and then I'm going to show you how to go about getting your things this dark. It's really quite amazing. It's not an original concept of mine, but I do want to share it with as many as I can. So, if you've struggled trying to coffee dye or tea dye fabrics or paper and you're just not getting dark enough colors to make you happy, then this video is going to make you very happy. So let me show you what I've done so far. These are just a couple of end pieces of lace that I stuck in at the last minute, and look how black that got on the ends. I mean, excuse me, it's just really quite amazing. I think I need to get a drink of something. I'm losing my voice. Hopefully I can talk now. So here is a longer strip of embroidery lace that was very off-white. You can see a little bit. I mean, nothing on here is as white as it started out, but look at the various color differences that I got. Here's another example of lace going from light to places that are extremely dark. More lace. This was absolutely absolutely white when I started. Now it's various shades of brown. This also was very kind of off-white, and look how dark it is in certain sections. So there's a nice color change there. More embroidery lace. And see the differences. And you cannot predict too much in advance what you're going to get in this process. So just be willing to be happy with whatever you do get. This was real light. You can see a little bit of white, off-white thread there, and that's what it was overall. Now it's a beautiful shade of brown. A larger piece of embroidery lace. Look how the ends sometimes turn darker. And it really boils down to how much exposure to air that it gets. In this particular batch, there were a lot of pieces like this that were laying underneath other pieces. And so they did not get as much exposure to air while they were drying. And, it's a process of being exposed to air while you're still absorbing some of the tea dye. And so the less it's exposed to air, the lighter it's going to be. And as we got two pieces that were more on top, they're a bit darker. It's beautiful reddish brown. This was laid on top, and you can see there are places where it's much lighter than other places. So it just depends on exposure to light. Now here's a good example. This is just a piece of muslin that I stuck in there. And here's more the natural color of the muslin. And then look what happened to it. And you get these wonderful striations that can happen. And it's just really fun when you see that happen. You know, it's not going to happen to everything, but here's another piece of a larger piece of muslin. These were sort of in the middle of the batch. And here, this started out a pure white handkerchief. And look at that. Look at this wonderful edge right along here. And it's very mottled and just beautiful. This one got more air. I'll show you how to do that. And this was done on purpose so that I would have at least one part of it that turned out really dark. So I'll show you all this as we go along. Here's another one. Same thing. So those were just totally white napkins when I started. More lace. More lace. And here's some cheesecloth I stuck in. And look at how great that turned out. And this was some of this. In fact, this piece may have been laid on top, and maybe some tea bags put on top of this in different places. And so you get that lovely change of value from light to dark. Here is another piece of cheesecloth. Ugh, so much fun and so easy to do too. This is a lighter kind of a canvas-like cotton, and I don't know how I came by it. I think maybe it might have been in a group of fabrics that my sister gave me, but look at how there was some lace lying on top, some of the embroidered lace lying on top of this, and so we get kind of a transfer image of that lace onto this fabric. And you know, the underside, of course, is lighter because it would have got less exposure to air, and then this was on the top. So here's some more embroidery lace that was at or near the top, and so you see the difference in how dark it got in places as a result. And here's a large piece of lace fabric that was in there. So I got a beautiful warm brown throughout, and then in places where I strategically put it, I have some sections that are much, much darker. So yeah, I'm very happy with how this turned out, and I will show you next my second group that was prepared for the dye in a completely different way. This grouping was laid flat in a large baking pan, and then it was just layered upon layered and in the baking pan, and like a large piece like this, it had to be folded and laid in there, and then the tea was poured over it, and then it was left to sit for several days in the mixture. And so that's one process. Of course, in this process, whatever you put down first in the baking pan is going to wind up being the lightest that you get, because it will have little to no exposure to air as the process is going along. So then it's not going to pick up any of the darker values. But those pieces that are laid last are the ones that will have more exposure to air, and they're going to wind up darker. So keep that in mind as you start to layer if you use this process. If you use process number 2, which I will show you next, then you're going to see that everything, just about everything, turns out quite dark. So we'll move on now to process number 2. Okay, before we get into process number 2, I found this had slipped away from the other group. This was part of process number 1, and look at how this turned out. And I think I think I folded this in half and went around the perimeter of the pan, and so that's why I have all these wonderful, really dark striations throughout the entire piece, because that would not have happened if I had just simply laid this on top. So yeah, that was fun to get that one. So now this is process number 2, and these are not fully dry yet, but I'm going to unwrap them anyway because I'm tired of waiting, number 1, and I can dry them with my heat gun as I need to. But I wanted to be able to film this and show you this particular process. Now, in this, smaller pieces, mostly lace trims, were used and rolled up into small little packets. You don't want to make them too big, so you keep your packet rather small, maybe like only 2 or 3 pieces in it, and then you roll it up tight. And some cases I put a tea bag inside the packet, and in other cases there is no tea bag. So we'll have fun opening these up. And now they're all tied with string, and this is jute string, and of course it gets dyed as well, so that makes fabulous string to use in other ways. So here we have a piece of embroidered lace that was folded in half and wrapped around a tea bag. And so, I guess there's 2 pieces of lace. And so this inside one, it did color, got a little bit of spots there, but it did not have access to air, so it did not get very dark. And then here was the outer piece that was folded in half and wrapped around, and you can see what happened here. Beautiful. And this is still quite damp, so after I get done filming, I will dry these with my heat gun. So let's open up another one. There's something different in each little bundle. I also varied the string a little bit that I used, and I think most of this string was either white or a light tan. In fact, I have some of it here. And you can see it was either this one or that one that I used interchangeably to tie up my little bundles. So here we have some very loose weave lace that was folded in quarters or thirds, I guess, and so that's how that came out. quite damp still. Now this looks like some regular thin cotton. I need some help. Which brings up a point: when you tie these bundles up, make sure you don't tie them too tightly. I mean, you want to get them fairly tight, but try not to make your knot any tighter than necessary, or you'll have to cut it to open it up. I'm trying to not do any cutting. Just because I want the string to be as long as possible for future use. Okay, there we go. And see, the string itself can cause some beautiful striations in what you wind up with. So this was just, there's a piece of embroidery lace that got a little bit of coloring. Here's another tea bag, but the outer piece, which is just some lightweight cotton, picked up more dye, and we got this beautiful part right here. This is so much fun. Okay, let's try this really big one here. Now this one was tied with a much bigger piece of jute string. So that's much thicker. And again, picked up some nice striations simply because of the string. I believe this piece was a bit, kind of a medium brown to begin with, and now it's just a darker brown. You see how, depending on the length of whatever I'm wrapping, that, that's going to determine how bulky the little bundle becomes. And so, you just have to go by feel as to the size you wind up with. Here is some very dainty lace piece. And that, I believe, is all that's in here. Oh no, there's two pieces here. So we have this piece of lace, and then this one. This one on top got more variation in hue, and there was a tea bag in that one. I put, I believe, 5 or 6 tea bags in the pot, and so that's why there's going to be a lot of bundles that don't have a tea bag inside. Beautiful. You can see where the folds picked up darker than the rest of it. This part of must have been on top. This is a piece of embroidery that was kind of an off-white with a bright yellow. I knew I was probably never going to use it in any way, so I stuck it in, and of course it darkened all of the off-white area and muted the yellow. So now, you know, makes it more usable for me. Just, you know, personal taste. This hardly got anything. Another tea bag. You may be wondering if I left these bundled up until they were 100% dry on their own, would they have gotten darker? I do not know. This is my first time to do this, actually, and so I'm just barely a step ahead of you if this is new to you. But I'm not sure that I would have gotten any further darkness. I will cut up the tea bags once they're thoroughly dry and dump out the tea, but keep the bags for other projects. That's lovely. Very grungy. Oh, you know, I think some of these are real vintage lace pieces. I know not all of them are, but this one for sure is very vintage and very delicate. You should also know that when you're tea dyeing, there is an acid or chemical in here that will cause your fabrics or paper to disintegrate a bit as time goes on. I probably won't be around to see what happens to my work, but just keep that in mind. You know, this isn't going to last forever. Thank goodness we're in the business of junk journals, huh? So we don't mind so much if we don't mind at all when things age, so long as they just don't totally crumble. That wouldn't be any fun. This is another one of the vintage laces. It's always lighter on the back side. Some more vintage pieces. So, there we have that. That was what I got from my little bundles. And so now we'll move into phase 3, and I will show you exactly step by step how to do this for yourself. Okay, I'm starting with just an old measuring cup that I have, and it works quite well. And what you want to do is collect some black tea. The brand does not matter. Just make sure it's black tea. Now, one of the ones that you might want to consider, it's a little more expensive. It's called chai tea, and it is black tea. The reason for this is it's got some cinnamon in it, and so that adds a nice aroma to everything. And when you're all done, your dyed pieces will have a light cinnamon odor, at least for a while. So the brand doesn't matter. Just make sure it's black tea. And I have 6 different kinds here. English breakfast, and you know, just look for brands that are as inexpensive in your area as you can, and that should be sufficient. Don't go buying expensive tea unless you're going to drink some of it. I'm not a tea drinker or a coffee drinker, So what I get is strictly for crafting. So 5 or 6 packets in like a this is 4 cup. This is a 4 cup measuring cup. And while you're doing that, you should fill a pan up with water enough, just guesstimate enough to fill this up almost to the brim. The water does not have to be boiling hot, but it should be pretty hot. So I forgot about mine and boiled some of the water away, so I have a little less than I had planned on, but that's okay because this is certainly going to be quite enough to do what I need to do and to show you how to do it. So now you're just going to sit this off and let it sit anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. It's going to take a while for the water to get as dark as you want it to get to do a proper job. So, this process does take patience, but it's worth it in the end. So I'll be back when my water is ready to dye. To dye with. Or with which to dye. Okay, enough of that. Okay, well, we're back, and as you can see, my dye water has turned very nice and dark, and it's ready to use. And I've noticed that I've lost some in the evaporation over the night, so I don't want to lose any more, and we'll now need to proceed. So I pulled out a bunch of pieces that I want to consider, and these are the old tea bags from the other dye. So we'll take them out. So I have a bunch of bits of vintage lace and new lace, and also a bunch of trim and stuff. And here's some netting, and so I have some, this is muslin, and I have some other bigger lace bits over here. And here is part of a nightgown of mine that I dyed previously, and I have used it in a journal already, but I decided here's another leftover piece, or I don't know if it's the other side, I don't think so, but anyway, maybe I had 2 nightgowns I ripped up. I want this to be much darker, so I'm going to re-dye that. And then I have some lace, more lace goods to consider, more muslin, and this bigger stuff is going to have to go in a different pan, I think, because I'm only going to have room in here to do the wrapping. And so I will pull out some of this white off-white jute cord to tie things up with, and we'll get started. I'll wrap a few for you, and then I'll take a break and film the rest off camera, and then we'll be back when we're ready to drop the dye in. So, okay, where I want to start. Obviously, what you put in first is not going to get any air or much air, and so it's not going to turn real dark. So I'm just going to snip off a piece here. Find a good place to make my cut. And I'm going to start rolling this up. And I want to stick one of the tea bags inside. So I'm going to press out some water and stick it in here, and then roll the rest of the lace around the tea bag. And that should give us some, slight differences in color from one end to the other. And then let's wrap this in something. I'd like to go very dark. I'm going to take one of these vintage pieces and roll this around the outside and tie it all in place. The first one I do, I pull real tight, but then the second one I just pull lightly, so that later it'll be easier to untie. Okay. I only have 5 or 6 tea bags, so I won't be able to put a tea bag in all of them, but that's okay. Now let's see. I'm going to cut off some of this. Okay. Let's put another tea bag inside. Don't forget to press out as much liquid as you can, and you need to be very gentle because they will rip apart and then the tea will fall out if it splits apart on you. So we're going to wrap the rest of the lace. I'm going to cut off this tag. But I'm going to leave the string so it dyes as well. Okay, and then I think we'll maybe wrap this around the outside. Is this all one circular piece? I guess so. Okay, well, I'm going to offset the part that dangles down, and I folded it in half, and so now I'll wrap this around. I think these edges are going to turn real brown. I go in one direction about halfway and then turn it around and go the other direction. And this string, which is jute, is going to darken up real nice because it will be out in the air the whole time, yet soaking up some of the dye. Alright, now let's try maybe something a little different. I've got this netting. You don't want to do too much in one bundle because then it makes it harder for the dye to really do its magic. This has been sewed here. This is a piece I got from my sister who is in the wedding alteration business. So I think this makes a good piece to wrap around the outside of something. So let's get this as dark as we can. So I hope you get the idea. And the first one is tight, and then the second one is gentle. Okay, I think you get the idea, and so I'm going to stop the video at this point, and then I'll be back after I've got a whole bowl full. After I get a whole bowl full of bundles. Try and say that one fast. All made up, and then I'll bring you back in. Alright, I have all my bundles tied, and I put some extra fabric around the perimeter to help soak up some of the dye that doesn't immediately get pulled into the bundles. And of course this along the perimeter is going to have at least some of it that is exposed to the air the whole time, so I expect that to get pretty dark. I'm not sure whether there's another tea bag that got lost down in the bottom, so in case there is one, I saved out a bundle. I don't know why I would do that, because I'd have to untie it to put it in, but anyway. Alright, we'll go ahead and stick that one in, and then if I do still have a tea bag that I need to put in, I'll make one more little bundle to go in here. So now we're just going to carefully pour our dye around. Try to hit each bundle. Oop. Yep, there is another bag in the bottom. Right, now what do I want to wrap around it? I think we'll grab some more of this really chopped up piece of whatever off of somebody's bridal gown, I expect. Come on, untie. There we go. Okay, what have we got here? A little piece. There's a little bit of lace that's already wound up. So I'm going to wrap the tea bag on top of this lace, and then wrap this other piece around all of that. And I'll have to make sure that this gets some of the dye on it. All right. Now this is going to sit for about 3 days, and it'll take a while for the bundles to sop up the rest of the liquid in there, and I might need to go make another batch, a small batch of dye to pour over this. I don't know. Maybe I can. I just want to make sure that all the pieces are wet, and we'll start soaking up more of the dye. Last time I let the batch sit for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, and there was still dye on the bottom that had not been soaked up by any of the bundles. And so then I set the whole container out in the sun to get all the rest of it to either dry up or get soaked. Then you have to, at that point, once it's sopped up all the extra down in the bottom, then the bundles, everything will start to dry. But because they're all wrapped up tight like this, it takes forever for them to dry. So I wound up putting the container back outside so the sun could speed up the process. I suppose I could have done it with a hot gun, but I didn't want to do that. I'd rather it just dry up naturally. So, but as you saw when I unwrapped that bundle, they weren't completely dry all the way through, but they were as dark as I needed them to be, so I had no problem taking the bundles apart and then drying, just laying everything out in my studio for a day for it to get thoroughly dry. And even then, some of them didn't fully dry, so that's when I used my hot gun to finish the job, so to speak. Anyway, there we go. And you can see, here's some examples of the pieces that were dyed flat in a big baking tray. This just turned out fantastic. Anyway, so you've got 2 different processes you can use, and you may favor one over another. Oh, I did take 2 of these dried tea bags that were used in the prior dish and stuck them inside of a couple of bundles here, just to see whether even though they were dried out, if they still could be used to bring color into the inside of those bundles. So we'll see. It may be that once they dry out, they're completely useless after that. I just don't know. But the way to find out is to experiment. So, there we go. These will now sit for several days, and I will be back once they've dried out and hopefully the dye has done its job. So, I'll see you soon. So, I guess you can say I have quite a haul here, and it is the result of only 4 batches, and I couldn't be more pleased with the dyeing, the whole process. It does take time and a lot of waiting, a lot of waiting time, not that much effort, but a lot of waiting in between for things to dry and so forth. But it's well worth the effort. And I mean, you know, I've got these 2 big packages here now of all the things that I've dyed just in 4 batches. So, you know, it's a really good process. I've given you 2 different ways to do it, and so I hope you'll experiment and maybe even do some coffee dyeing if you prefer. I'm sure the process will be quite similar. Anyway, thanks for being with me and seeing the whole process, and I hope you learned something. If you found this content of value to you, I hope you'll give the video a like, leave me a comment, ask a question, and by all means share it with your friends and family. I would appreciate the support. So that said, thanks again. This is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.